for one reason or another, I often find myself coming back to the concept of God and religion and a lot of this stuff I talk about. And some of that's probably obvious as to why, but I was in a conversation recently with a few people, and they were noting how like they were in really difficult circumstances, from childhood, and just kind of the deck really stacked against them, and just a really difficult spot, and didn't really see a way out of it, but ultimately kind of gave themselves to God, and that's where they found the strength, and ultimately they believe God is the one that got them out of that tough situation, gave them the strength to overcome it, et cetera, et cetera. And listen, I have no idea if God exists or not. So that's entirely possible. And it might be as simple as that. And I say that completely genuinely. But let's just assume for a second God didn't exist. You start to appreciate the functionality of that belief. And I've talked about this before, but it becomes so clear. The more I talk about the flaws of the mind, the challenges we have to overcome, to truly be honest with ourselves, to overcome those flaws, to try and improve and become better people, better thinkers, etc. I mean, in some regard, those challenges are so insurmountable. We've talked about the unbelievable volume of answers and insights and advice and coaches and videos and articles and books that are all meant to give us the tools to be better and to improve and to overcome all of those things. But that's not it. Those don't work. There's a missing piece. And the missing piece to me is simple, not easy, but simple. It's a battle. Like you are, not literally, but you need to overcome this unbelievably massive challenge in your own mind to actually utilize those tools and get somewhere, right? Everything in our lives, intentionally or unintentionally, from what we were ingrained in and is hard-coded in us from an evolutionary perspective, to our childhood and how we were raised, and society and the things that we see, and people intentionally trying to manipulate, and other people with well intentions also trying to manipulate, and etc. You can go on and on and on. All the things that are constantly flooding our minds, and we know our minds aren't perfect. So how could you ever overcome all of that? Well, from a very practical, pragmatic, logical perspective, you have to give yourself reason to believe you can, right? The task is so daunting that it's so easy, and your mind will want to go there and take that cognitive out of like, you can't do that. Many of us don't even consciously think it. We just subconsciously are like, don't even bother. It's never going to happen. But if you have the power of some idea that, there's a being that lives in the sky, or whatever the belief might be, that can give you that strength, even if it's not real, that's the part of the equation you need, right? You plug that into the equation, and now all of a sudden you feel like, I can do this. I can overcome it. I can find the strength to do it. And the power of that is massive. And we've seen that, right? Obviously it can break bad, and there's all sorts of downsides and negatives to religion. But in that simple term, it's extremely powerful. And it's crazy if you think about it, because again, let's just assume for a second God isn't real. These people I was talking to, or any other people in that same boat, I mean, they did it. They overcame it, right? They were able to find the path to where they could overcome these challenges and become better people, but they don't even recognize that. In some ways, their mind can't even give them credit for that, because it's such a challenge. They can't even believe that they could have done that themselves. It must have been some greater power, a greater being that did it. And I think that's pretty telling of the challenge and how daunting it is, and how difficult of a task it is, that we have to believe somebody else did it for us, or some other being did it for us. So it's again, just an interesting aspect of religion and God, and where it fits into all this, and how powerful it could be. And I guess in some ways, listen, again, if God's real, then shit, let's just go that way. But for those that don't believe, for those that aren't sure, for those that even that doesn't seem to work, it would be amazing if we could find that strength ourselves, if we could find that on our own, if we could recognize in ourselves that, hey, we have the ability to do this. It's super fucking hard, but it can be done, and not have to rely on somebody outwards. Because again, trusting in God is a good scenario if it works. Like, that is a better outcome. But I think it's also reflective of what many people do go the route of, which is like, this just can't be done. Somebody's either got to do it for me, or something's got to happen and break my way for me to be able to do this, because there's no way I'm actually going to be able to do it. So I guess it's kind of the gift and the curse of religion in some ways. If you can do it and it works and you really buy into it, great. But on the other hand, it's also kind of like perpetuating this idea that it's not something you could actually do on your own.